I didn't want to feel ever like I needed to hold back on how much I could give them. I wanted to always feel like the exchange of the business that they were bringing in versus the time that I needed to invest. I always wanted to feel like that was a win.
Sponsored by Spyglass Realty. If you're an agent listing in another city or state, we will take great care of your clients and pay a referral fee. If you're an agent in Austin that's thinking of making a move, let's talk.
I'm here with Isabel Affinito, and Isabel is with the Wire team with Spyglass Realty, and she is one of our agents, actually one of a team leads here. She has her own team. She has an amazing business, and I was just doing the numbers before we got on the Zoom here, and your team altogether is right under 50 million contracted and closed for the year. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. I should probably know that number, but that comes as a surprise to me. So very exciting.
Yeah. So what I wanted you to, tell us where you're at now, because we're going to get back to that. And then, start over and tell us where you're from, when you got here, what you did, and what led you to this journey of creating a world-class team.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me today, Ryan. I'm excited to be talking with you. It's one of the things I've been wanting to get back into since, COVID happened, and I've got a baby who I'm currently wearing. So Tony is joining us for this podcast. But doing things like this is something that I've been eager to get back to for a while. So I'm excited to be here. And thank you guys for bearing with me on my mom journey with my 8-month-old today.
Yeah.
So you said basically some history, right? Is what we're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm from Oklahoma originally. Moved to outside of Philadelphia, went to school at Villanova, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I don't think a whole lot of people start out being like, I want to be a real estate agent when I grow up.
Right.
It's not one of those common type of professions. So I didn't major in anything that seemed relevant in school. I was a liberal arts major. And as I started to approach graduation, really didn't know what to do with that. I had thought that I would go to grad school. Maybe I would teach or write. Like I was thinking about teaching history, something like that. And I thought I'd go back and get a master's or a PhD or whatever. But as I started to get towards the end of college, I realized that I had never really been in the working world. I had jobs, throughout middle school and high school, but I had never really been in the working world. And I thought I should probably go experience that before I commit to however many more years of higher education. So kind of stumbled into real estate by accident, really. Opportunity presented itself, went into real estate. It was initially
commercial. Where were you at that point, though? You were in New York, is that right?
Yeah, North Jersey. So okay, Chris, Jersey. Yeah. So I met my husband in college, and we had already decided that we were going to follow each other, wherever that took us. So Chris had gotten a job in New York City, and I got a commercial real estate job in North Jersey. And we lived in Hoboken, which is it's like the Brooklyn of New Jersey, sort of.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
And so was your first job at commercial or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it was a commercial firm up there. What were you doing?
So I did research for them initially, and then moved into retail brokerage. So working with, big national chains, that kind of thing, finding retail space for them. And commercial just wasn't really the world for me. Like I didn't love what I was doing. I didn't see myself there long term. And one thing that kept standing out to me is that everyone was telling me, put your time in your 20s. Like if you put the work in, you're not going to make any money in your 20s, but you'll make more money than you could ever want in your 30s. And so you just have to hang in there.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking to myself, I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of weird as a woman, because if I think sometime around, my 30s is when I want to have kids, what does that mean? Yeah. Right? What am I putting all my time in for if I then have to pivot right when I want to have kids?
Yeah.
And I watched other women around me. Like there was one woman who had a baby while I was there, and she was back in the office, like 4 or 5 weeks after her baby was born. And, sitting in an office 8 to 6 or 8 to 7, she was a top producer and she was working really hard. And I thought, I'm not sure that that's what I want for myself. Yeah. So that was one thing that encouraged me to sort of pivot out of commercial.
Yeah. Okay. And did you join a residential firm there before you moved here, or what?
Yes, I did. So I stumbled into a residential firm that was on the corner down the street from where we lived in Hoboken. And I had like 1 or 2 clients that had followed me when I left that firm. Yeah. And so I walked into this residential brokerage and I said, hey, I have a couple of transactions to close out. I need a place to put my license. will you let me hang my license here? And the broker was he was kind of weirded out by the whole thing, but he was like, yeah, sure, hang your license here. So I finished working with those couple of clients. But in the meantime, I thought I might as well do some residential leasing, get a little bit of cash flow. And before I knew it, it was a couple months later and I was making twice what I was making at that commercial firm just by doing apartment leases.
Now,
And
did Chris follow you to that firm?
no, he continued working in the commercial and development world.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at that point, you guys decided that you wanted to move to Austin, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And what was the thought there? Why Austin?
So I have an aunt and uncle here, and I'm from Oklahoma. My family's mostly like Texas, this area of the world. And so I always grew up coming to Texas cities, Austin being one of them. So when Chris and I got together, we would come down and visit my aunt and uncle here, and he loved Austin. So he had been saying for years that he thought it was a cool city and he'd like to move here. So a couple of years, I guess it was maybe 3 years out of college, Chris asked me if I wanted to move to Austin. And it just seemed like an opportunity I didn't want to pass up. I was like, I don't really have a burning desire to stay in North Jersey. And like, what do I want to go be a residential agent in Montclair, Morristown or something? Like the longer I stay here, the harder it's going to be to leave. And if my New Jersey husband wants to move to Texas, like, let's do it. So that was kind of how that happened. And he basically, what he said to me is, you're making money selling residential real estate up here. Why don't we both go down and do that in Austin? I bet we can figure it out. And so that's what we did.
Nice. And so I remember your story. You went to one of the big firms here. You already had a history of production. And they with a couple of the big firms. We don't want to say any names, but
Sure.
One of them wouldn't have you because you didn't have a history of production in town.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think you had another mishap from another one. I forgot what the story was for that, but
well, that'll actually kind of tie into one thing I want to talk about choosing your brokerage, which is understanding if they're set up for where you're at. So, I mean, the short story on that is that they were tempted to bring us on, but they really weren't set up for new agents.
Yeah.
And so it turned out to be a blessing in disguise that didn't work out for us.
Right. So you went to a bigger firm. They were really set up for new agents, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
that's like their bread and butter.
Right. Sorry. So the firm you ended up going to was really set up for new agents, and they had a lot of education, and you were there for a number of years. Were you on a team there?
No, I mean, Chris and I worked together, and we were already working with Emma, who is still with us for like Operation CTC.
Yeah.
But we didn't have, aside from that, we didn't have a team. The three of us were working together, but that was it.
Yeah. And so I remember when I think I interviewed with you like 3 or 4 years before you came over here.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which to me was really a blessing because we weren't ready for you. Okay. So I met with you and Chris at a coffee shop right down the street. And the reason I reached out to you was because this is the first time we interviewed, right? Is you were doing some of my open houses. And you would do them well. And I saw your progression go, through the roof. And I think at the time you were doing Zillow leads, right?
Yes. So that was how we got, our feet under us in Austin. I don't know that I would recommend it for everybody because we spent a lot of money on it. And it was many years ago. So I'm sure that they've changed the way that things work. But we were able to do, I believe it was 10 million in production in our first year. And we didn't know anyone in Austin. So most of those were, well, actually, if I broke it down, it was a combination of like, company leads and open house leads and referrals from the first people we worked with and Zillow. But it gave us something of a lead flow to work off of, which helped us stay in the game when we were just losing money every month because it was like 6 months before we closed our first deal.
Right. And so I remember, 3 to 4 years later, I reached out to, I remember sending you an email And I was like, well, hey, would you, be interested in checking out what we have going on right now? And you were like, right back, you were like, no, I don't think so. But Chris is kind of taking a different direction in his business, so he might want to meet with you. You were like that with it, right? And so
people tell me I'm direct.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely direct. So I was like, all right. So I go to lunch with
Sometimes
Chris.
comes off as rude, which I don't intend to be.
Right,
but
right.
I am very direct.
That's right. And so I go to lunch with Chris, and you were right. He was definitely he was moving into the development and building, these gorgeous spec houses and stuff. So I did not know that. So I remember telling him, going through all the stuff, the systems we have, and the retargeting and all this stuff that we're doing for agents. And I remember he's sick that day too. He had like a stomach flu or something like that. And he was like, I think I'm down, but let me, I actually want to talk to Isabel. So he went home to you and kind of went over that, right? And then
he basically said, I was very impressed. I think you need to meet with him.
Right. And so then we met together, and you were not an easy sale either, right? Because we go, I think you and I had coffee, and then you're like, okay, I want to have dinner with you and your wife. And like, I was like, oh, we got to do this. How are we going to do this? Our schedule was full. So we had like a late lunch at like 4:00.
Yeah.
And then you came over to Spyglass, right? So at that time, you had kind of recruited an agent, Morgan, at the time was thinking it was going to be for me, but like you were already putting your plan together for a team.
Right. Well,
right?
Kind of. And I want to back up real quick and just say this is the irony of real estate, right? Which is that we came to town, even though we had a track record in New Jersey, or I did, we didn't have anything in Austin. So nobody would touch us basically, except for the firms who want to take on brand new people.
Yes.
So there were several firms that were like, no, we won't even talk to you. Come back to us after you close $1 million in production, basically. And it was only, a couple of months after we closed our first couple of deals that all of those brokerages were reaching out to us and saying, have you considered making the move? You should make the move. And so I learned to be pretty quick about just saying no, because it was like, I don't have time for this distraction.
Right.
I'm busy working. And now all of these people who didn't want me 7 months ago are now begging me to come work for them. No, just flat out the answer is no. Like I had just closed that door in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm happy where I am. I have good support. I have good mentorship. And I don't need to distract myself with wondering if the grass might be greener over there, which is honestly a piece of advice that I would give to agents is that if you're pretty happy, honestly, if you're 80% happy, don't drive yourself crazy thinking about switching. Right. If you're not doing production and you're not happy and you really believe that you could benefit from something different, then go for it. But I see so many agents waste so much time entertaining all of these offers to move. And it's like, just commit until it's not time to commit anymore.
Yeah. And that, it's interesting. So 2 things with that. One, we're careful with hiring new agents. We don't hire that many per year, like 4 or 5 at the most. We hire agents that are newer, but not brand new. We're real careful with. And the lesson there is like, but if someone were coming from New Jersey and they had like, I would be all over that. Right. And the second thing is like, if you're one of these brokerages, eat your heart out because, you're at 50 million right now. Okay. And so you,
and who knows, I might not have been at one of those places, right? Like it's possible to have a bad fit for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, and that's what I was going to say. I'm interviewing a guy. I interview people all the time. I interviewed a guy the other day, and I don't think I looked at what he did. He's like at 10 or 12 million. And I did not realize that his brokerage had a lot of the same stuff and he was completely happy. And so in the middle of that interview, it's like, look, how can I help you? Because I realize you're not going to move, right? And I want this interview to be worth something to you, So, I can realize that too when someone's not a fit. And it's not a fit for any other reason is that he's completely happy where he's at. And I said that.
And it sounds like you're not sure you'd be offering anything different.
Exactly. And then making that transition would be tough. So you're at, you have Morgan, you have a mentor who is Jason
Edwards.
Edwards, who I'm sorry, last name escaped him. I'd love to have him on the podcast too. And he was kind of helping you with the transition of starting your team. Okay.
Yeah. So what happened with Morgan is it's always one of those things where something like this looks so much more intentional looking backwards than it was in the moment.
Right.
So that's one takeaway I would offer to people is if you feel like you're not clear on where you're headed, if you feel like you don't have a clear vision for whether you should build a team or not, if you feel like you have no idea what you're doing, that's how I felt. So that's normal, right? So what happened with Morgan was that I was getting to a point where I was just struggling to keep up with dollar productive activities. I had done a lot of soul searching to make sure I'd cut out the crap. And I was at a point where I really had situations where it was like, which of these offers am I going to help my clients write first? For which client? Or, at this point in my career, I had 13 active buyer rep agreements. And so every week I was sitting there going, I hope one of these people goes out of town, because if 5 of them all want a tour, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so I was looking for help. I already had Emma doing all of the CTC stuff and as much back-end paperwork stuff as I could possibly give her. And so it was just like the, prospecting and the being on phone with clients and showing them property and writing up offers, like things that I would consider to be necessary, right, for doing the business. And I thought to myself, man, it would be great if I could get like 5 or 10 hours a week of help from somebody who can take some tours off of my plate and things like that. And so I reached out to Morgan because I had known her at my previous company. We'd done some training programs together and I liked and trusted her. So I reached out to her, and before I could even tell her like why I was calling, she's like, oh, I'm so glad that you called me because I'm considering this offer from another brokerage. I'm thinking about moving over there. And I really wanted your advice because I'm about to like take it, or maybe she had already taken it, but she said, but I think it was the wrong move.
Yeah.
And it was like an admin position. And so it kind of forced my hand to be like, well, if I want her, I need to commit. Like I can't just have her for 5 or 10 hours a week. I got to commit.
Yeah.
And so that was that first push that pushed me to take on an agent and start training her.
Nice. Okay. And so then I just want to say this is that you are probably one of the top 5 people when it comes to putting like real systems together, right? Like you don't just go and like me, I'm all gas, no brakes, then people have to pick up the carnage behind me, right? You think of how you're going to do things and you systemize everything. And so where did you learn that?
I think it's naturally wired that way. So you just referenced Culture Index, right? Which we've both taken. And I just did that workshop recently. And so Ryan, you and I have basically similar personality profiles, except that my detail orientation is higher.
Yeah.
So that gives me what you just said, a little bit of a break, right? Yeah. So I have a lot of like drive to move forward, but I also have this detail orientation that makes me want to slow down and go, well, wait a second, how can we fix that? That thing happened. Okay, I need to know exactly what happened. How do we make sure that never happens again? That's kind of how my brain works. And I've just learned about myself over time that I'm a strategic thinker. Like I find a lot of satisfaction from thinking that way and like integrating a lot of different ideas. Yeah. And I don't say that to be, not bragging about it. It's just how I'm wired. And I always assumed that everybody was that way. But from building my team, I've come to understand, like, sometimes I can see solutions that other people just don't see.
Yeah. And so I've gotten organized over the years, right? But it's gone through the stumbling through how to do things wrong, to do things right. And so where look at your business and your team is like, everyone that first of all, you have everyone that's come over, they're extremely happy and, they know what they're doing. How much emphasis do you put in the training and how much time does that take?
That's a good question. We have a combination of what I would call formal and informal training. I spend a lot of time with my people. And one of the things that I decided about how I was going to build my team is I really didn't want to play the compete on split game. Yeah. I just decided from the beginning, I'm going to collect a high split. So meaning like costs a lot to be on my team, but I'm going to use that as justification for myself to deliver an enormous amount of time, energy, and attention into these people.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to feel ever like I needed to hold back on how much I could give them.
Yeah.
I wanted to always feel like the exchange of the business that they were bringing in versus the time that I needed to invest. I always wanted to feel like that was a win. And so it's maybe a little different than the way that some other brokerages or teams are running. But to put like sort of some tangible to it, we have a Monday morning call with the whole team. That's kind of operations, administrative type of stuff. We have a Tuesday call every week with just the sales team. That's an hour long. And then I have one-on-ones with several different people on the team. So I'm probably spending between Zoom and phone calls, maybe 5 hours a week directly talking to my team.
Right. And then the systems lead them through going things very smoothly. So when you look at what teams and brokers need in their team leaders and brokers need in their business, what are some of the things that stand out to you that they may not think of?
I'm surprised by how many people aren't having the type of meetings that we're having.
Yeah.
So one of the women who I recruited told me that her team had not had any kind of a formal meeting or conversation in months. I can't remember how many months it was, but it was a really long time. It was like 6 months or a year or something like that, where I found that shocking.
Yeah.
And it just kind of made me wonder, like, what does team mean to them then?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so like, what's going on there?
They feel lost. I mean, we have a bunch of independent agents and we do our weekly huddle every week. And what I realized, I try to push the independent agents, say, look, if you feel free to join in the huddle, we'll keep the first 15 minutes of it about the market, right? And then when we start talking about our leads, then you can just hop off. And the ones that have joined are like, they feel so much better more informed. And like, I'll see one of my agents posting on Facebook, hey, I have a question about the market or something like that. I'm like, I'll message them like, come to our lead. I mean, come to our huddle because we cover this every single week.
Right.
Not only the market, but how to deal with the clients in that market. Now, of course, we have our monthly meeting, but that's a little bit more, too many people and not enough collaboration in that.
Yeah.
And so one thing we talked about, and I want to kind of go over this one more time. If you're a brand new agent, well, let's say you're an agent. We talked about brand new agent, but if you're an agent that you're at a place, because 73% of all agents terminate their license within 5 years. Okay.
Right. Isn't that, I mean, being in the industry, it's easy to understand why, but I think that's shocking to people who have never done this.
So I talked to a lot of agents that they ended up at the wrong place. Okay. What do you think an agent needs to decide what do they need to take into consideration when they're trying to decide between a team and a brokerage, or a team or a brokerage, or like, which one should they choose? And like, a lot of them are very much similar, but like, what are the factors that you say, okay, I want to go with this team or this team or this team or this broker.
Right.
And I've been in the business for 2 years. I haven't done that much and I want to make a move.
I think that number one, knowing yourself is really important, because whether you should join a team or a brokerage is, I think, very dependent on your personality type.
Yeah.
For me, I'm very independent. And when somebody tries to tell me what to do, I can get kind of difficult to deal with. So right. I probably never would have been good on a team.
Right.
Most likely. But there are other people who are more, they want guidance, they want support, they want details, they want to do things right. They're worried about, hi, what's up? They're less autonomous, than I am. And if you know that about yourself, then it's probably a good idea to go onto a team.
Yeah.
And it's not really a question of where will I, the split is lower on the team and it's higher at the brokerage. Well, but 100% of zero is still zero.
That's right. Where's the value?
Right. Where's the value? So with a 73% fail rate within 5 years, I mean, you could go onto a team where you're making 30% of the total commission and make way more money You can make six figures doing that if somebody's giving the right kind of support versus going to a place that's like, 90%, you keep 90% of the split, but if you only close one deal that year, then you're still making minimum wage.
Absolutely.
So it's really which one's the right one is completely dependent on that person.
Absolutely. And I want to wrap it up because you looks like you got a very important client meeting with your baby there. So what's next for Wire Team?
Oh gosh, what's next for Wire Team?
You're adding people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm open to adding anybody right now.
Yeah.
I think we may get to a point where we're ready to add, but right now I feel pretty good about where we're at.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in like growth just to grow.
Right.
I want to make sure that I can pour into my people.
Yeah.
So I think what's next for us is really getting serious about marketing and PR. So, that's been DIY for me for years.
Yeah.
And I have recently hired a professional company to help me put together a brand strategy and all of that kind of stuff. I'm ready to level up on that. And I think that Wire has a fun story to tell, and we're doing cool things. We have great people on the team. We have a great team culture, and I want to be telling that story better.
Yeah.
And I also would like to be able to provide more leads to the team. I mean, leads is not our main value proposition.
Yeah.
What I tell people is, what I'm here to do is to teach you how to be successful at this. And sometimes you're going to get some leads, but that's not really what you're here for.
Right.
But wouldn't it be nice to use all of the beautiful listings that we have and all of the success stories of clients and the things the education that we know about real estate? Like, it would be cool to use that to attract more clients who like what we're doing. So I think that's the next big thing for us.
Yeah. And so I wanted to tell people where they can find you, because I get so many comments from people that follow you and Morgan on Instagram and Facebook. So where can people find you?
Yeah. So the best place to find us right now is on Instagram. And in fact, I should double check our Instagram handle. I meant to do that before the call, but we got this baby. I think it's wire_Austin. Kelly, will you check it for me? Because I don't have it in front of me.
I think it is. Yes.
And then my personal one is Isabel.Affinito. Those are both on Instagram.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know you have a busy schedule. You're, wearing 10 hats, team leader, mother, and all that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, can I add just one thing about building a team?
Absolutely.
So I think that for me as a woman, building a team was particularly important. Because right here, the evidence is right in front of us. I'm currently wearing my baby because we had a childcare debacle today, which for anybody who's ever had children knows that that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I can get away with this on a podcast with you guys. It's a lot harder to get away with this in a new client meeting. Yep. Or, a listing appointment with somebody that you don't know well, or a buyer tour, like, hey, sorry, my baby might be screaming the whole time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, building a team was so timely because I got pregnant and had a baby, and having all of this in place beforehand was just such a godsend. But even if you're not headed in that direction, I think COVID has showed all of us that collaboration is so important.
Yep.
Because if you are solo and, all it takes is a COVID scare, positive test result, and you're knocked out of doing anything in person for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I think for agents who really want to be able to do the best for their clients that they possibly can, and also not lose your mind in the process, a team is a great way to go, or at least having like a partner agent who you guys can cover for each other when, excuse my language, but when the shit hits the fan.
Right. And so, we're a hybrid, right? We're a hybrid brokerage because we have leads, and we have they're not as a team, but a leads product. And then we have, independent agents. But one thing I like that what we've done very well, I think, is we're very heavy on workplace, and we built that Workplace by Facebook, and it's this virtual play. It really went into the stratosphere during COVID. It's such a big tool to build that collaboration, like you said. So it's very interesting points. I like I talk to agents all the time, and say if they need, like, I think we're pretty good, but if you need more handholding than that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you need more education, more training, like we give on the job training. We got stuff online, but if you need real, hands-on training, then absolutely look at a team,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that is a wrap, and we'll see you later.